Our session is called Small Town, Big Dreams. But I have a confession to make. I've never lived in a small town. I've only visited a small town, my own town, where I come from Vellore in Tamil Nadu. But I've lived all my life in Bangalore. I am a true blue Bangalorean. And I've always looked at small towns from the outside. I've always felt like it's wonderful to visit and, play with my cousins and go there on summer vacations. But I could not imagine myself living there. So I have a lot of interesting questions to my panelists. And I think small towns, we've always have this idealistic, romanticized idea about them most of the time. Most of us want to take vacations in small towns, like when it's time for summer and we want to go to a hill station. So these are all small towns, but no one really wants to live there. No one wants to have that experience, that lived experience of the people there. This is something I have personally felt very strongly as a child. When I have seen my cousins growing up in Vellore, and I've always felt like I could never live there. So today, I want to ask my panelists. So over here, I think the lady who introduced, she talked about the books that they've written, and Tanuj's book is called Diwali in Muzaffarpur, and Abdullah's book is Patna Blues, and Parimal's book is No. No path in Darjeeling is straight. And Gillian has translated Dr. Rahi Masoom Raza's book, and it's called A Village Divided. So my questions will basically be revolving around those books. So my first question is to Abdullah. There is something always aspirational about small towns. So as someone who has always lived in a big city, I can only see that as an outsider. But small towns have evolved a lot today. And I think technology has a lot to do with it. So for instance, some of the most quirky and best TikTok videos come from the small towns. So, for us, it's easy to look at it and laugh. But these are aspirational people who are aspiring for a better life. So Abdullah, do you want to talk about this evolution of small towns? So now you don't live in a small town anymore. You live in Mumbai. And obviously, you will have that different lived experience. So I'd like you to talk about that.
Thank you. I would like to start with my own personal experience. So I started from a small village in northern part of Bihar. When I was growing up there was no electricity, no roads, nothing was there. So that time I used to think of Patna as some kind of El Dorado, some kind of Paris, New York for someone who has not visited those cities. So when I first landed in Patna and looked at the river Ganges, I thought it was some ocean, Pacific Ocean. Even I asked my father. So there was different kind of dreams. For example, if you are living in a small town, I used to think of how it was to experience the table fan. Table fan was a luxury because there was no electricity. So I used to aspire there when I will start living in a city, in a Patna or some other city, there will be table fans. That will be the luxury. So that time my dreams, my aspiration was to have a table fan or ceiling fan in my house. Then I used to go a madrasa, a small madrasa, Thais house, no table, no benches. That time I used to think that when I shift to the big town, big city, there will be benches. So in the course of time, your dreams, your aspiration evolve. And that is what I had tried to capture in my book, Patna Blues. So there is a character called Arif, whose background is similar to me. A story is the figment of my imagination, but it is heavily drawn from my experience. So how Arif dreams to become an IAS officer, and for that he need to move to a bigger city, that is Delhi, but his father is not able to bear that expenses, and so he has to stay back in Patna, and that is why he not able to fulfill his dreams. So in the course of time, things are changing. For example, when this village people used to use uh, uh, not aware about the luxuries. For example, shampoo. When shampoo started to be sold in 1 rupee sachet, so people started using this, and now things are changing. Even in my village, there is electricity supply. Still, there is a private genset electricity supplier. They will charge 500, 600 rupees per month to supply the electricity. During the period, electricity is not there. So there, when there was no electricity, nobody thought
So
about.
they've learned to adapt.
They learned to adapt. Once electricity, now they need genset, but everyone cannot afford that. That is how things are changing, and social media is especially playing a very important role. And whenever anything happens in my village, I'm able to know because everyone is super active, even more active than the city peoples.
So, so that's an interesting perspective, Abdullah. Tanuj, I wanted to ask you, as someone who used to, so you've lived in Muzaffarpur, right? So,
Muzaffarnagar.
sorry, Muzaffarnagar. I'm really sorry. So, as someone who's lived in Muzaffarnagar, and now you live in a big city, so what do you think that you leave a small town, but it never leaves you? Do you agree with that?
First of all, my experience is slightly different from Abdullah's. Uh, Increasingly in the last 10, 15 years, and especially as internet and other modes of communication have sort of gone to the small town, I think this sort of distance, at least with regards to information, has changed. I was asked once in an interview, the soul of India lives in the villages, used to be the thing. And my answer to that now is the soul, I mean, the soul of the country probably lives in WhatsApp groups, and there are as many in small towns as there are in big cities. And small towns also play a big role in the sense that they are the conduit to politics in even smaller towns and smaller villages. I grew up in Muzaffarnagar. I spent 17 years, the first 17 years of my life there. And growing up, we were always aware of how it was an infamous town, because of high crime rates, and also there was communal tension always in the district, and even to this day. I think the major riots that happened in 2012-13 are a fresh memory for everyone. So it was always this, and there were some sort of secular spaces that we had access to as children. One of them was our school, for example, and the other was hospitals, and like such. There were some institutions where there would be sort of equal participation, or people would engage with equally. And part of what the stories in my book Diwali in Muzaffarnagar cover is also how these places are now progressively becoming communalized. And so that is not in all the stories, but in a couple of stories, this strain is touched upon. And I think of the small town as any sort of, like idyllic, romanticized version in my head. I love Muzaffarnagar because it was home.
Yeah.
And I'm fully aware of the fact that I have no other reasons to love the place. So that is where I am with regards to. So the small town doesn't leave you because you have spent time there. And there is no credit to the small town for that, per se. And, like experiences may be different. But in my case, there's not much credit to Muzaffarnagar why I love it.
So it's more personal than anything else. So, like you said, so small towns like places like Darjeeling and all that have this whole idyllic thing about it. People view them like this. People go there for vacations. It's bucolic. That's what we think. But you touch upon something very interesting about depression and suicide in small towns, and it was surprising as an outsider to read about that, because I think we are so insulated, in our cities. All of us, like Tanuj talked about secular spaces, all of us are living in insulated spaces in the big city. And this is not that evident in small towns. So, would you like to talk about that, Parimal, about the depression thing that you mentioned in your book?
Sure. But first, I would like to clarify a thing. That is, unlike Tanuj and Abdullah, I didn't begin my life in a small town.
Yeah.
I went there in Darjeeling in my 20s as a government college teacher. It was my first appointment. It was in 90s, early 90s. And I lived there for about 5-6 years. And I didn't have any idea that one day I will write a book on this. I wrote the book almost more than 15 years after I returned, almost 20 years after I returned from Darjeeling. I live in Kolkata, also a big city like them. Darjeeling, you have touched upon that part of depression and all, but I will take up from what he has said, that the secular part of it. Darjeeling, small town, big dreams. Darjeeling started as a reckless dream by the British. They wanted to build a home away from home, sort of Scotland, the Scottish landscape and all. It's sort of, the nostalgia, they built it up. But then Darjeeling also became a magnet which drew people from all over the hills, and all the different tribes and communities, from Lepchas to Bhutias, all these different communities from Nepal to Sikkim, they came and they began to live in the town, and they also in a way built the town. And one thing that is, in many ways, Darjeeling is different from other small towns of India. And particularly now, in one aspect, I would say Darjeeling is different is that I'd like to say this in this way, that for me, after all these years, how Darjeeling lives within me is a soundscape that every day, in particular hours during the day, you will hear, church bells and temple bells and ajans from mosques and the Tibetan horns from the gomphas. So it's different communities living peacefully together. And there is a new community, a Darjeelinge identity has emerged over the years, in spite of all the divisiveness all over India, in spite of all the tensions and all. And there is it has been built around a political aspiration, a Gorkhali aspiration. And my book deals with that part. Now, to come back to your thing about Darjeeling, actually I begin from that depression and nostalgia and all, because of the, nearly for 4 to 5 months a year, and particularly for me, when I went there from Kolkata, it was hot, sunny plains to the damp, cold climes. Those depressions, and actually earlier, even in early mid-19th century, when the British built those hill stations, particularly for sick soldiers, and many of these soldiers, they used to commit suicide because they couldn't take that gloomy, bleak weather which continued for months. And if you go to the cemeteries in Darjeeling, there will be those unmarked graves where, because, in a Christian cemetery, it was not allowed to bury those ones who had committed suicide. So those unmarked graves tell a story. But that is not the whole of Darjeeling. Darjeeling still has inside it that vibrancy and that color. And the title of this session, that Small Town, Big Dreams, I would again say that Darjeeling is a big dream for the people there, and Darjeeling can be a dream for all of us because of all this communal harmony that is there, in spite of all these tribes and communities who have been living there for so many years, centuries in fact.
That's wonderful, because what I read, the parts that I read, it was very evocative. The way you brought it alive. Even now, when you talked about the soundscape, it's like you could sense all that. So coming to you, Gillian. So you talk about, you told me about how city dwellers should never underestimate small towns. And that is something we always do by default. People living in big cities just definitely underestimate people in small towns, and that they have enormous self-confidence and belief and pride in their days. So, can you please elaborate and talk about why you think this is the case?
Um, uh, Due to my translations, I have to research them. I spend quite a few time. I've spent quite a lot of time in Kaspas, in the North Indian sort of small towns of erstwhile Awadh and the fringes of Awadh. And when I found my Kaspati friends coming to Delhi, or I found them in Calcutta, you'll find a lot if you ever go to the Bengal Club. I can tell you that. They're all talking about the Kaspa, and they want to scoot back as soon as they can because they know it's the best place on earth. There is still that. This is, in a way, a continuum. There's a lot breaking us apart. But there are continuities also. And the Kasbah was always a center of learning, of culture, of poetry, of writing. I mean, if we look at the Hindi authors that we have, the people I've been fortunate enough to meet, okay, they may have come away, but they went back. And it's always a very big feature of their writing. There's Manohar Shyam Joshi from Almora. There's Rajendra Yadav from Agra and Meerut. There's Bisham Sani from Rawalpindi. There is Nirala from Unnao. Okay, these are not big city people. The big voices come from the small places. This is my feeling. And among the authors I've translated, Srilal Shukta came from Mohanlalganj. He writes in a distinctly, in a flavor of, although the book that I translated called Rag Darbari is set in a village, and the town is mainly there as a center of corruption. So they go there and bribe people. I mean, that for them is the town. But for Rahi Musum Raza, who a lot of people will remember as the man who wrote the dialogues for B.R. Chopra's Mahabharat, who was a novelist and a poet. He was known as the Byron of Aligarh. All the women were in love with him. And he writes at the beginning of his book, because he comes from a Kasbah, he comes from slightly bigger than a Kasbah, but a city born on hard times, Ghazipur. I'll just read the first few lines. Within the old fort of Ghazipur, there's now a school where the sound of the Ganga's waves reaches, but where the murmuring or cold sighs of history do not. No sentry now patrols the walls, nor even do schoolboys come to them to speak to or hear from the river shimmering in the light of the setting sun. No one can guess how many stories the muddy waters of this great river must know. But mothers are absorbed in tales of jinn, fairies, ghosts, and thieves, and for goodness knows how long, this sleepy town on the banks of the Ganga has never even thought of sitting in the river's school. If anyone were to come and sit on these walls and close his eyes, it's still not impossible for the villages and fields on the far shore to be transformed into dense jungle, for the huts of the rishis of the Tapovan to appear, and for the young princes of Ayodhya, Ram and Lakshman, to emerge, bows slung over their shoulder, defending the sacred solitude of the forest. And he says, "This is my town. Whenever I pass through its narrow lanes, it puts its hand onto my shoulder. It meets me here and there on the roads of all my various stories." So that is an example. And this brings us to the small town, also the Kasbah, as a repository of, as a place built on pluralism. And that was a particular structure of the Kasbah. And you can still find it, I still find it, in the annual events of things like Muharram. But I could go on far too long, so I'll stop here.
Okay. So I think coming back to Abdullah, you in your book, so like he said, his book is about this young boy, Arif, who is trying to pass the IAS, right? So he has a lot of feelings of inadequacy because he's from the small town, and he feels like if only he could go to Delhi, he would have been able to get better coaching, he would have passed. His friend goes to Delhi and he succeeds, and while his friend has moved on, Arif has still stayed there. He's frozen. So, but then at the same time, his brother goes. Arif's brother goes to, he goes to Bombay, he goes to Delhi, and there are a lot of tragic events that happen. So, both time it yeah. So both expeditions, his brother's expeditions, fail, and Arif remains there. So as while I was reading it, I was wondering why is he? I mean, initially his father didn't have money to send him, but then later on he could have. So there is this sort of inertia that Arif has, right? So would you want to talk about that, why this character couldn't move beyond his? So he has these dreams and he knows what he needs to do to achieve them, but he doesn't do it.
If we look at the Arif's character, he's a typical Indian middle class guy who thinks a lot about his family. So his concerns are so many. He's not only worried about his IS dreams. When his father is not able to take care of his family and he retires from job prematurely, and there are financial strains. So he's thinking so many things. So he does not want to use those limited resources to spend on the preparation of this IS exam. And if Zakir goes out of Patna, there is no financial cost. He's going there to a struggle, but there is no financial cost involved. But if Arif goes out, if he joins any big coaching center, then a huge amount of money is required. Then he need money for food and rental. So he thinks that he will manage it. And it is a human tendency that when we fail, we try to find out what was wrong. In same set of circumstances, many people will succeed. It is not that those guys who are staying back in Patna is not able to clear IS. There are so many.
He does it 4 times, right? 5 times he does it at the exam. So that
every time he's able to clear but finally he's not able to.
Yeah. So it speaks for his consistency.
Yeah. And this happens because it is very common place in Patna, in Bihar, that many students will try to get into IAS, and they will burn their energy, and at the end of the day, when he is 30-year-old and not eligible for most of the jobs, so then he will regret and think what went wrong, and then come out with these things were not in my favor, so I was not able to do.
Yeah.
Same happens with Arif. When he fails, he thinks, so even in one instance, he thinks that Mrityunjay was a upper caste Hindu, so he was
Yes,
selected.
I wanted to talk about that.
So it also comes. Then, at the end of the story, when a Muslim girl tops the IS exam, so his theory
So
is
he can't
nullified.
use victim blaming and he can't use
so
that.
his theory is nullified. So Arif is a regular guy who has dreams, and he does not have resources to fulfill those dreams. So he tries his best. He's giving a, but then that married lady comes into his life, and that is also some sort of distractions. And he also blames for that. If I would not have followed Sumitra, things might have different. So
that's
there
the
are many
landscape of
factors.
his life. So
there are so many things. When we fail, we blame certain factors, certain things, certain people, certain place. So we create when we succeed, we say, oh, I succeed because I worked hard. And when we fail, we find many excuses. So same happens with Arif.
So, like I said, I come from Vellore, and I've never lived there, but I would have, if my life would have turned out very different. I would not have been sitting here talking to all you people. I wouldn't have written my books, and that's so. Vellore is always home for me, in the way Tanuj says, like how Muzaffarnagar is home. But there is, nothing else that sets it apart. So, in that sense, I think our lives would have followed a different trajectory. My life would have been extremely different if I had continued to live there. So, Tanuj, in your story, My Friend Danish, so there is So there is a communal element which comes in, which changes the friendship between two people. And it's to do with the whole moral policing incident, right? So do you want to shed some light? Do you think moral policing is excessive in small towns, or is it the same in big cities?
In that story, my friend Danish, at the root of it, it is about how in a small town like Muzaffarnagar, the aspirations of the Hindu child are very different from the aspirations of the Muslim child. And that was, in a way, my own lived experience also. And that story covers that. Their paths are already going to diverge after some point. However, they are sort of meshed together by one particular incident, which is not so much moral policing as it is, in later years. So the story is set in early part of the previous
90s?
decade.
Yeah.
But in later years, it was called love jihad, in a way. And so that is how and why a violent incident happens, and Danish comes out injured because of that. And that sort of leaves the Hindu friend, the narrator, with a guilt that he forgets about. But then later in life, when he has made his, he has arrived at what might be called his station in life, like he has set up a life in Mumbai, he's reminded of it.
Yeah.
And so that is what the story is about. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. No, I was asking about small towns and moral policing. There's a correlation?
I mean, it's everywhere, no? Like in
Now
Mumbai
it's
also,
everywhere.
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. So, so Gillian, I wanted to ask you. I think we might have not much time left for audience questions. So I'll just quickly ask. I have one question each. So, what do you think of the village as a microcosm of the world at large, where labels fall away?
Where labels fall away.
Do you think that?
No, I don't think the labels fall away.
Okay.
I think if you want to get rid of the labels, you go out of the village, basically.
Okay.
I think it's the other way around.
So village-
And even then, getting rid of your label is very difficult. What I would like to say, if I got one more thing to say,
Yes,
is to mourn perhaps the decline of the small town.
Yes.
Rather than thinking it's going up, thinking it's going down. And I'd like to give as an example of that a lady I used to know called Asimun. And it's an example of the big dreams you could have. Asimun was a Mirasin, a traditional family singer from an Awadh who worked in Awadh Kasbas, and she had a dream of learning classical music. And so her mother took her to Baba Alauddin Khan in Maihar, another small town, where he was at that time the finest sarod player in India. He was also the ustad of Pandit Ravi Shankar. And there she was accepted as his shagird. And she studied, and she brought back, and she started a peculiarly enriched folk tradition. She could sing straight classical music and the compositions of Baba Alauddin Khan exactly as he had taught her. But she also infused the folk tradition with the most incredible classical bass, which was recorded by the Sangeet Natak Academy. And she continued to work but not do public performances. She worked for the houses of the former elite of the Kasbas of Awadh, and she worked, when they moved to the big cities, she went there. And so that is an example of the big dreams which even in older times which especially then, were a speciality of the small town and which we have lost today.
So, and ending with the last question for you, Parimal. Darjeeling is not, so I'm quoting from your text actually, Darjeeling is not to be found in Darjeeling because it has already been hijacked into the posters hanging on the railings of, okay, I've written this very illegibly. So I wanted to ask, so Darjeeling is not to be found in Darjeeling, but has been hijacked in the posters. So are you talking about how the romanticization of a small town or is it the commercialization that you were talking about?
Yes, in fact, Darjeeling has been hijacked. It has been romanticized and commercialized endlessly. For more than a century, in fact. and it has been it's a brand name. That's why Darjeeling, as I was saying, Darjeeling is a sort of a different, it's a hatke, jara hatke thing. I mean, it's a brand name. Lots of products, from tea to handicrafts to a lot of things, are sold as the Darjeeling brand. There are restaurants all over the world. I guess in London, for example, there is a restaurant named Darjeeling, and Darjeeling, it's a magical name actually. So in that sense, it has been hijacked. It has been sold out. But the point, I will come back to what we have been talking about, that about the small town identity. Whether Darjeeling has lost that small town identity. In fact, every small town has its own unique identity. Cities in that sense are much similar. There are lots of
They're
things that are
homogenized.
homogenized. But in fact, if you look closely into the cities, all the big cities are actually, those constellations of small towns. The city I live in, Kolkata, for example, actually it's a mosaic of small towns that Bengalis and Gujaratis and Marwadis and earlier the Anglo-Indians have built. So each small town carries within itself the seed of an identity. Now, in this commercialized age, when everything is being marketed, that identity is being depleted in many ways. But but one of the big factors that I think Abdullah has been touching upon is that small towns are being drained out because people are moving to, young aspirational people are moving out to the cities, and it is also the same case with Darjeeling. Most of the young bright people, they don't live in Darjeeling anymore. They are living Darjeeling. The same way the villages are die down. Actually, it's a matter of scale if you look at it this way. For example, the people who have come to Darjeeling from the villages, for them, Darjeeling was
Yes. It is they
their
aspire
goal,
to,
right? Their
yes.
Paris. And in fact, one of my friends from a village called Lepcha Jagat, he used to say that when he was young and his parents would say that tomorrow we will take you to Darjeeling to have ice cream and a toy train ride. They couldn't, he said that we couldn't sleep at night. For us, Darjeeling was Paris. But when he went to live in Darjeeling and when he finished college, Darjeeling was too small to hold him back, and he moved to the cities. But another interesting thing is happening since Tanuj touched upon WhatsApp communities and all. Small towns are again being rebuilt through these WhatsApp and social media groups, because you'll find most small towns have those blog sites and WhatsApp groups of people living in different parts of the country and even the world who are now getting connected and maybe raking up those old nostalgias. And some of them are even coming back to have festivals and all. They discuss about after their retirement plans when they'll go back to their small towns. It's all maybe a nostalgia and dream maybe, but in a sense, it's also real.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we can have questions from the audience if anyone would like to ask us any questions. So I must admit, I can't see anything because the lights are in my face. So, and I'm also not wearing my glasses. So if anyone has any questions, I'm just peering into the darkness here.
In that case, I would like to ask a question to
Yes.
Tanuj, if nobody is asking. You spent you said 17 years in a small town,
17.
and you live in a city, in a big city, Mumbai. Uh, so how do you carry that small town in yourself, in the sense that these days the big cities are becoming gas chambers, all the the pollutions, the rush, you are not having the quality times. And when you think about small towns, it also has its advantages. You don't have to commute that much and all. So how do you carry your small town memories now when you are living in a big city?
Two things here. First of all, the memory of scarcity. You sort of carry that. If not scarcity, then the inability to get the thing you want. So small towns, at least when I was growing up, there was nothing called instant gratification. There, even if you wanted ice cream, there would be a trip made to, like in big cities, you can get it delivered now. So the memory of scarcity, scarcity remains, and whatever the affluence of this person who has now set up a life in a bigger city, uh, every decision, however small or large, is kind of driven by that memory of not being able to take those decisions so lightly. So I moved to a new place in Gurgaon, and I'm not able to buy a sofa for the last 3 months. I mean, my living room is, it just has a dining table. I can't buy it because every time I go to a furniture shop, to me it's like too expensive, you know?
They are too expensive. They really are.
Yeah, they are too expensive. And, it's completely irrational. It doesn't make any sense for me to delay the decision. I'm not going to go to Muzaffarnagar to get a cheap one. But I just can't make myself buy it. The second thing that you mentioned about, this idyllic sort of air quality and pollution, etc. I think that is gone, at least in North India. Like Muzaffarnagar was the most polluted town for 4 days in a row last week, or even more than Noida and some other parts of Delhi. And and you feel it, like in terms of pollution, in terms of very many other things that might attract people to say Darjeeling. My small town has none of that. There is nothing really that would really entice you to go there. So for me, it has never been true. I see a lot of sameness now, whether I'm in Muzaffarnagar or I'm in Gurgaon or Delhi, because most of my life is actually on my phone or like elsewhere, and it's this distinction doesn't hold there in that medium. You don't know, if you're looking into your phone, you could be anywhere. And I think, yes, so all of this has led to a certain demise in what is small town identity. And I'm not too sure whether, it is something to be mourned or, something to be accepted. I don't really know.
But I would like to touch upon another thing that she mentioned, this touch upon, that those moral policing and everyone knowing everyone. In a small town, you, in your neighborhood particularly, you know each and everyone. You know them for generations, maybe.
I don't think so.
Yeah?
I don't think
No,
so.
but in old small towns, I think people who have been living there for 2 or 3 generations, people know their neighborhoods very well. That, in fact, I am also, although I live in Kolkata, but actually I started my life in a Kolkata suburb, which is a small place. And, in my neighborhood, I used to find that everyone knowing everyone, 3, 4 generations. And it creates a sort of a mental map about your neighborhood, which in a big city you don't have. I'm not romanticizing it. It has its pressures because all the time you're feeling that you're being, well, whatever you do, people are having their extra eyes at you. Where in a big city, they don't know you. You don't
I
have this
actually
freedom.
wanted to, I kind of I forgot to ask this question. I wanted to ask Abdullah about the whole difficulty that his character has in romancing the woman of his dreams, because this whole thing of, people seeing them. Like, I wrote an article last year for Huffington Post about how in small towns, the terraces are where, romances take place. Eyes meet across terraces because you don't have spaces for people to fall in love. So I wanted to ask Abdullah about that, his character story doesn't move forward because, in a way, also because of the small town limitations of space. You want to talk about that?
Especially in 1990s, it was not only difficult, very, very difficult to steal a place of where you can meet your lovers. Even everyone in the city becomes your guardian. Even person who is not known to you, there is a place called Chiriyaghar. It is a zoo. So there is a rose garden. So you find couples sitting there just talking, nothing, holding hand. That's it. Some gentleman, not known to any one of them, will come to the boy, will start scolding. Some people will start slapping also. If one police constable is going there, he will come and inquire who is there. Tell me your father's phone number, I will call him. And this kind of blackmailing tactics they will use. So most of the intelligent people will use this cinema hall, and especially morning shows and that kind of cinema where only 5 6 people will turn up, so they will buy ticket and then find a seat of their choice, and that is the time they will spend 2 hours together talking on sharing that greasy samosa and chutney. And even that corner, nothing much will happen because there is a mental block. So we are from a generation where love means what you see me and I see you. That's it. So that was a different kind of love affairs, and that sense has been captured in my novel. When Arif is trying to meet his lover, who is a married woman. That is the
She's a married Hindu woman.
that is a
So,
big problem. So whenever he goes to the nearby town of Hajipur in a auto rickshaw and then buys a ticket and then will watch movie together and they will come back. So it was very, very difficult. So still romances happened, still people got married that way also. So despite, but there was some kind of joy, some kind of sexual tension in that relationship because you are not able to touch your lover. So whatever you get easily, you don't enjoy. So it was very difficult. Even a film show with a lover. So someone was asking me about dating. कि what was it like a dating in 90s? तो I used to reply in Hindi. हमारे ज़माने में डेट का मतलब खजूर होता था. डेट का मतलब खजूर. That's it. So that was the charm of that period. Things has changed.
so I think that's it for now. We have very short time left if anyone wants to ask questions. We can take 2 questions apparently, if someone wants to. So if not, then we can.
Hi. So I had a question.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So say one of you or someone moves from a small town to a big city. Have you noticed your relationships or attitude change towards your friends or families who stayed back in a small town?
who wants to answer?
Yeah. Yes, of course. When you move on across the social hierarchy, things change. Honestly speaking, many of my relatives are in my village, and we talk once or twice in a year. But to my friends, and we talk every day. So once you move from the one place to other place, or you move from the one social strata to different social category, then it also affects because many of my relatives would hesitate to come to my house. Even in Delhi, when I was in Delhi, many relatives, but they were doing some small job in the factory. So we will welcome them, but they would hesitate because they think so bade aadmi ho gaye in comparison to him. So it obviously affects your relationship. Even your, I have seen real life examples. I used to live in a police colony. So there was a senior police officer, IPS officer, and his younger brother was a constable.
We'll-
He was a constable, and when he fell sick, he wanted to have bigger car to take him to hospital. And his brother was commenting, if you are a constable, try to understand. You will need this smaller car. That is how the relation are affected once you move across the social hierarchy.
Yeah. One more question. So, like you touched upon Darjeeling, and while growing up, I read a lot of Ruskin Bond books and sort of got the romantic idea of Darjeeling, but I haven't been there. So, like, I think you mentioned that it has been overly romanticized or something like that. So, does it have that kind of a charm which has been portrayed in literature?
Well, I don't have, I think, 1 second, maybe, or less.
Time's up.
Yes, it still has its charms. That's why people still go there. Darjeeling has a resident population of about 1 lakh during the tourist season. You have 3 to 4 lakh people flocking to this town, and in a town that was built for only 10,000 people. So that tells you that the romanticism endures.